All right, so we're live again. And a minute ago, I was live, and some of you guys hit me up saying that you couldn't hear or you couldn't actually type anything. So shoot me a message on Twitter if that's still happening. I'm gonna pop open Twitter because I definitely want to answer some of your questions. As I noticed, some of you guys were responding. I don't know, maybe it's like a few minute delay now of actually doing chat in general. So yeah. Um, I'm back live. Looks like I got a few of you guys on here right now. And I'm not sure if maybe the chat is still not working. There we go. Hey, what's up? Welcome, everyone. Thanks for dealing with whatever happened. I have no idea. Maybe it has something to do with StreamYard, the service I'm using for this. Maybe not. I don't know. Corey, thanks for it's really weird. It worked after like 5 minutes after my long rambling. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you? Hey, what's up? Where are you guys coming from? Say hi. Tell me where you're from. Definitely want to hear. I love seeing that it's from people around the world. Yeah. Sorry, Dylan. Wasn't working out. Anis. Hey, what's up? Welcome. So where are you guys from? Let me know if you have any questions at all. That's why I'm here, is to answer some questions. And it's funny because before I'm like sitting here for a few minutes going like, hey, usually you guys at least say hi. That was kind of odd. I'm so used to not being able to keep up with questions, let alone having it not work. Anyways, hey, yeah, I don't know. That's weird because I could comment on both my Coding Entrepreneurs channel and my personal channel. So I'm not sure what was happening there. Corey from California. Cool. Where in California, Corey? You're currently building a simple stock manager using Django. What do you think? I think this is a really good idea. If you did my supercharging web scraping course as well on my website, it will help you actually get the stock prices as well. Although there are APIs out there. I'm curious if you are using an API, if you're scraping, what are you doing? And then are you actually doing the trades yourself through Django, which also would be pretty cool. I think there's an API service that's kind of like Robinhood, but for APIs. So that might be a cool thing to check out. From Lebanon, nice. Rita, welcome. I think we've talked before. Let me know if we have. I look cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Bay Area, are you staying there, Corey? I've heard a lot of ups and downs about the Bay Area in general. A lot of people leaving. Some people are stoked about it because like prices of rentals and home prices are going down a little bit, or at least temporarily. South Africa, nice. Welcome. Wagwan, not sure what that means. When am I coming up with the Django project? I do Django projects a lot. I have more stuff on my website, codingforentrepreneurs.com. I'm currently working on a Python GUI that uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the front end. That's the one I'm working on right now on my website. As far as YouTube is concerned, I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to be posting my next YouTube series. I got a lot of stuff in the works that it's just like a matter of getting it done and hammering out. You feel like it's a dumb question. I don't think that any question's dumb, because the thing about questions is if you're unsure of something, you should just ask it. If you don't ask it, you'll never know. So smart question, dumb question, whatever, those, I don't think they exist. I think there are better questions and there are bad questions. But I think it's a good idea to ask questions, even if they're good or bad. So is it easy to go with the newest release, and how? So the newest release of Django. See, the thing about Django is it hasn't actually changed that much since Django 1.5, which is a long time ago. That's like 8 years ago. There certainly have been changes and pretty big ones, but the core of Django, the models, the views, the templates, all of that hasn't really changed. Forms even. There's been some subtle things that have changed in there, but overall, it actually doesn't matter which version you use, which I do recommend that you use an LTS because it lasts the longest. Unless, of course, you're watching a tutorial, then stick with the video that's in the tutorial. That's the most important. How do you overcome the fear of thinking you suck at coding? Welcome to the club. Seriously, I mean, I think I can accomplish a lot of things with building software now, but I don't actually know if I write the best software, which in a sense, somebody who's really, really good, like way better than me, would probably think that I'm not great at coding, which is pretty interesting because I've been doing it so long. But I think this fear doesn't go away. I think what you dance with is the fact that there is the fear there of not being good enough, while also putting out work and continuously putting out work, continuously building new projects, and eventually you're just confident that you can at least accomplish what you're setting out to accomplish, even if it's really hard to do. I think that's the thing that you need to really focus on. And also, your skill level is going to be based off of what you think you are, right? Like, I know I can build a lot of things now that I couldn't before, and I always want that to be true, right? So in 10 years, I want to be able to build things that I couldn't build today. Whether that's with a team or not, that doesn't really matter. It's much more about, are you making progress internally? Because sucking or being bad is an external measure a lot of times. Hopefully that helps. I don't know if it does. Once you have your app ready, desktop, not web. Is that a question? You recently enrolled. Thanks for enrolling to the website. I'm glad they are very helpful, or helping a lot, rather. That's great to hear. You're currently 14 years old and you want to drop out of school. Do you think it's too early for you to get a computer science degree? Rita, I would say, why not do a computer science degree when you're also in school, right? Like, you don't have to drop out at 14, because there's another aspect of school that I think is downplayed a lot, is the social aspect. I would imagine COVID and all the lockdowns and stuff like that, maybe it's not the same for everybody. It's probably not. But once the lockdown's in, and once we can go back and be in person, there's a really important key component to socializing, right? You need to be able to work with people of all kinds of backgrounds, and that's what school does a lot. So at that age, at 14 years old, I don't think you should be dropping out of school. I think the only way to drop out of school is if you have a project that's really taking all of your time away from everything. Like, you basically can't sleep because you're doing this project so much. That's when you start thinking about dropping out of school, or leaving a job, because you should be able to do school and still, you could probably get a computer science degree and still go to high school or primary school, or whatever you call it. You should still be able to do all of those things. It's really hard, but it can be done. Just, get off the internet and go get that degree. Once you have your app ready, a desktop app, how to distribute it the right way. This is a tricky question because it's not always that easy. It's like, do you go to the app stores, or do you just build a website and do it that way? Personally, I think going the website route, like building a website, going on Reddit, going on Discord servers, talking to people about it, not pushing them, but asking them if this actually solves their problem, and try and display it that way. There's a lot of methods on how to actually promote this. This is that actually distributing it, like the technical side of distributing it using some sort of scalable static storage like S3 on AWS, or Google Cloud Storage. Something like that is a way where you would actually store the actual app itself, the binary or the executable. Nice. Ladera Ranch. Yeah, I think we've talked before, huh, Dylan? It's been a little while, I would imagine. Yeah, I thought so, Rita. Tampa, Florida. Nice. Nebraska. Cool. Grand Island. Is it actually an island in Nebraska? Deno versus Node. I haven't used Deno. Node is just a runtime. I know that much. I think Deno's a runtime too. Man, I always I definitely should know this. Yes, it's a secure runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. Yes, I remember now. So the Node.js developer, the initial developer of Node.js, ended up making Deno for a good reason. I just don't know what that reason was. Obviously, I just forgot about what Deno was. So definitely check out. I think he gave a talk somewhat recently. I don't even remember his name, but I would imagine Deno it has improved a lot of the shortcomings of Node.js in previous iterations of Node.js. Would I ever introduce paying parity, varying prices based on locations for countries like NFE and CFE website. Yeah, so having different pricing throughout the world. If I hit enough scale, then yeah, probably. Right now, it's just like, I mean, the reason that something like Netflix can have this paying parity, as in pricing the services relative to the area, is because they have the resources to be able to divvy up their application to work that way. I do not have those resources nor the scale, right? So if I had 1 million subscribers on the CFE website, then yeah, I probably would be doing that. I'd probably be spending a lot more time on making it as fair as it possibly can be. But I would argue anywhere in the world, what you get for what you're paying for is incredibly fair, because the other thing is, if you get a job or if you get freelancing as a result of taking my courses, you're going to make a lot more than what they cost, like 10 to 100 times what they cost. So that's why I think it's actually very fair for everyone around the world. Realistically, I probably should charge a lot more, but I don't, specifically for what I just said. Okay. You've been working more on Vue.js as a front end with Django REST framework. Do I have any tutorials integration for Vue.js? No, I do not. But the thing is, Django REST framework and any JavaScript front end, they don't necessarily need each other to exist together. The way to integrate them is really, how do you do REST API calls in Vue.js or in JavaScript in general? You can just use fetch for that. And then you'll need to bring in your API keys and stuff like that too. So like any session key or a token or a JOT token, those things will need to be in the headers to ensure that you can do that full integration. I do have a video somewhere here on YouTube that says how to integrate Django with any JavaScript. I'm pretty sure that's somewhere on YouTube. So check that out. That would probably be pretty useful for you, I'd imagine. You're doing a hostel room booking system project using Django. How can I save data of each student like every year? I'm not sure what your last question is, but saving data is like at the core of Django. So you build a model and you save data that way. Hopefully that answers your question. After building the simple stock manager, I plan to fork the Django project and develop a way to automatically generate model factories and tests. And I believe it'd take a couple of months. Hey, that sounds pretty cool. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, you should do it. Corey, you're stuck on how to do custom users for your sites. Any insight? Yeah, I have a whole project on this on codingforentrepreneurs.com or cfe.sh. It's a custom user model or custom user auth, something like that. It's pretty straightforward, but the best thing to consider doing here is to actually have, I would say, a blank Django project and build your custom user model there, and then do it again and again. So you get a really solid understanding of how to build a custom user model, and then bring it into a pre-existing project, assuming that you don't already have users. Because if you already have users, then I don't think you should customize the user model itself. You should just make a one-to-one field relationship to another model that the user needs for your custom user model. Hopefully that answers your question. And you're making a social media app, Django, React with channels for chats. Do I think that's enough for a job? Potentially. It depends on how fleshed out everything is, right? So if you build the entire application and you have tests and you have really clean code, then yeah, you probably can make a case to get a job there. I would also say that you would want to know the code really well, so that if somebody picks one line of code, you can explain it. That's another thing about that, like exactly what's going on, potentially where the imports are from, stuff like that. How to make a pop-up form with Ajax. So like a modal, I'm assuming you mean, not a pop-up window. It's pretty straightforward if you know how to do Ajax. Thanks for the suggestion, though. Fidel, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate it. Super sticker. Nice. Let's see. I think I scrolled too far and I lost some stuff. What do you consider advanced Python? Concurrency, asynchronous programming, threads, socket programming. A lot of those things are more advanced. Also trying to build like animation tools, potentially using data science tools like NumPy and Pandas could maybe be considered advanced. But NumPy's like doing NumPy programming is a little different than what you might be used to with normal Python. So that's why it's kind of out there. And concurrent programming or asynchronous programming or using threads, all of that stuff from a conceptual level is like a little bit harder to grasp than just building, synchronous functions, regular Python modules. So, yeah. What advice do I have for you about building a simple stock manager? You're talking about some APIs. Can I further elaborate? Oh, yes. So thanks for referencing what you're building too. That actually does help, even though we've been talking back and forth here, Rita. So I don't remember the name of the API itself, but if you search something like Robinhood API service, you probably will find another service that allows you to put money into their API service so you can actually do the trades yourself via an API. Right. Like so something like Robinhood, you have to do it in the app. I'm saying like letting Python or whatever's doing your REST API calls to actually make the actual trades themselves. So that means that then if you're building an app in Django or Flask or whatever, that Django app could have a button that you can click and it will do the trade for you. Obviously, you'd want to be careful with that you actually have the funds to pay for it. But I would imagine these APIs are there somewhere. I totally forgot the name of it, but it's definitely something that I want to explore more myself. Because I think it's also really interesting to think, how do we make our own algorithms that will do stock trading for us based off of how we see the world, and using machine learning and maybe like sentiment analysis on tweets or something along those lines. Might be something that's pretty cool in the future. So you've used Django channels and WebSockets for IoT. Did you do it right? Can I give you some idea or keywords? So IoT devices do not need to use WebSockets to communicate with the internet. They can use standard HTTP protocols. Basically, you don't need Django channels for it to work. Although it is a good idea. I think that's a great way to do it because of the sort of real-time communication that these things can be having, which is often critical for IoT, instead of having something that pulls after a duration. I think that's clever, but it might be over engineering the problem that you have. I'm not sure what the problem is. So for example, if I wanted to build an IoT device that turned on a light switch when I press a physical button, that probably doesn't need to have a WebSocket running with Django channels for that device. I would imagine not, at least. Hello, welcome. London, nice. How's London these days? Is it still locked down? I know it was pretty bad, like a month ago. What advice would I give a medical doctor who wants to switch as a consultant? Room for VS Code for good. Consultation room for VS Code. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but how much Django do you need for freelancing on Upwork? You just need to know more than whoever's hiring, right? I don't love making the shop down the street, but if there's a project that's really low hanging fruit and you apply to do that project, assuming that it's not like really, really challenging, because there are obviously Django projects that are really challenging, you could probably get some freelance work with minimal knowledge. That's what I think, at least. But the idea is like you should probably have projects completed, right? At least completed. What's the easiest way to create objects from responses received from emails sent from Django? Text fields for email, body, file fields for attachments. I think there's an actual Django project for this, like a third-party project that you can use to have Django handle email for you. I don't remember what the name of that project is. I haven't seen it in a while, but it is something worth checking out. Yes, Deno, Ryan Dahl. I think he also did Node.js. Isn't that right? If you created a website with Django 2.2 and the newest LTS came out, like 3.2, how would I update to 3.2? Yes. Okay. So this is really simple. It's pip install Django dash dash upgrade. That will upgrade to the newest version of Django no matter what. And then when you run server, it's going to give you a bunch of errors or no errors. So, or migrate or make migrations. It's going to give you errors every time you run a Django management command. So those errors, you would just go in and fix them based off of the change log. Now, if you want to be a little bit more safe than that, as in you don't want to just have a bunch of errors after you upgrade, you can look at their change log, see the things that have been deprecated, and make the necessary changes in your code accordingly, then do the upgrade. Another option is to just copy your code into another repository, another working directory, and do the upgrade that way. So you can see all of the changes that need to be made. You can do a git diff on each page, and that will show you all the changes that need to be made. Then you can go to your actual working repository, make those changes, or you can do a git merge, or a lot of other things that require a lot more skills with Git. But overall, it's just a matter of pip install Django dash dash upgrade. That's how you always upgrade Python projects as long as they're released. And I believe Django 3.2 and Django 2.2 are going to have very, very few differences at its core. There might be new features that are added, but overall, I believe if you have Django 3.2, if you have Django 2.2, Django 3.2 should run your code with very little changes. Any ideas how to get apps or how do you get ideas for apps or even partner with others to build products? So I typically try to solve problems that I have that I know well, because then I can actually dive into it in the sense like, hey, I really want to solve this problem. And whatever that problem is, I get a bunch of ideas around that problem. So as far as getting ideas, another option I think that would be really good is to talk to someone who's been in an industry for a really long time. I think I heard this from, I don't remember where I heard this, but you talk to someone who's been in an industry for a really long time. I think it was Naval Ravikant, actually, the prominent VC and the founder of AngelList. He talked about it in the sense where you talk to someone who's been in an industry for a really long time and they know the industry in and out, and they can see all the holes and all the problems. You talk to them and you try and figure out where you could go in there to build a new idea that solves that problem through software, ideally. That's a really good idea to do that. So you could do this with quite a few people and see if you can come up with something that you're excited about as well. Solving my own problems is what I get excited about. That's why I work on those. Using Jinja 2 with Django. Do you have a tutorial on that? I do not, but Jinja 2 and the Django templating engine aren't that much different. So Jinja itself is based off of the Django templating engine. It's just for other Python projects. So I think if you know the Django templates, Jinja 2 isn't really that hard. And I do cover Django templates quite a bit. If you don't know the Django templating engine and you have the option, just stick with the Django templating engine. Jinja 2 is great, but like I just said, they're very similar. Do I have a Patreon account? I do not have a Patreon account right now. I don't get asked that very often, to be honest. You can always sign up for my website too, codingforentrepreneurs.com. That's another way to support everything I do. But I appreciate you asking questions anyway, because I think a lot of people are benefiting from those too. All right, so I'm going to be on here, I don't know, maybe 5 more minutes probably. I think there's quite a few of you still asking questions. If I get a few more super chats, then I'll address those, but I'll be on here just for a little bit longer. Okay. Have you ever gotten to a situation where you had to refactor the code to make the website faster, like prefetch, caching, excuse me? And if so, what's the overview approach how to solve such problems? Yes, you always want to be making your website faster. So refactoring the code, regardless of even prefetch or caching, refactoring the code on a somewhat regular basis might be a good idea anyway, because perhaps you repeated yourself several times throughout the code and you didn't realize it because you haven't been looking at it for a while. So documenting the code is also probably a good idea, although I'm not great at it myself. as in I don't spend the time to do it. So yes, when you refactor the code to solve speed problems, the speed problems are often because of inefficient lookups, which prefetching related items in a query set is a good idea for that. Caching is also a great idea. So using caching, like using a memory store like Redis to do your caching is a really, really good idea from the get-go. And that's usually what I do is I actually cache things pretty much really, really early on in my projects. So to actually solve this, I think it's just a matter of asking these kinds of questions. Like, can I make this function more efficient and how? And if I do cache this item, is that going to affect other users? And in many cases, it does. So if you cache something for one user, that might cache the exact same data for the next user, depending on how you actually go about caching it. So there is some trickiness to making sure caching is done right. You don't want to just blanket statement cache things. But I think it's an ongoing challenge. And looking at the logs, especially your SQL logs, can help you see what the most time-intensive queries are, like which ones are taking the most time. And the Django debug toolbar also is good for that as well. Hey, Daniel, welcome. Where in China are you from? Let's see here. Okay. Is there a school or institute where we can study Django instead of learning via the web? Because sometimes we need to contact our colleagues as well as direct support from teachers. I have no idea. I'm sure there is. There's got to be somewhere where like in-person Django teaching. I don't know where it is though. And depending on where you are in the world, I mean, it might be in Colorado or something, you know what I mean? Like, or it might be in Los Angeles or New York, or might be in a lot of places. I don't host one of these right now. I actually think teaching through videos is it's definitely my preferred method because I can stop and take a break and walk around, have something to drink, go hang out with my kids, my wife, go on a run, whatever it is. Is it better to use Django's token generator, i.e. password reset token generator for email verification, or recreate the wheel? Recreate the wheel when you absolutely need it. I actually really prefer Django all-auth for most authentication, but it's a good idea to know how these things work. So if you don't know how they work, then yes, it might be a good idea to be like, okay, well, how do I actually create a password reset token and all that? But overall, usually if Django releases it, like if the Django core team releases it, they spend a good amount of time on, well, I can't say this for sure, but I would imagine they spend a good amount of time on the security implications of how they're implementing something, which is something that not all of us can do. We might try to do it, but we might not be able to do it successfully, which I think is why it's useful to learn it, but maybe use Django's built-in tool or Django all-auth. What is an object? In Python, it's an instance of a class. In JS, it's a dictionary. Are they both the same? No, they are not the same, although the term is the same. So an instance of a class is exactly that. So it's a part of a specific class that has been defined. That can be turned into a dictionary, but it's not a dictionary. JavaScript, they call dictionaries objects, which also can be an instance of a class, but a dictionary, it's like a little bit more murky there. But basically, you think of an instance of a class as an object in Python, and a dictionary in Python is a dictionary. A dictionary in JavaScript is an object. An instance of a class in JavaScript is also an object. I think I haven't spent enough time thinking about this question because it's like a basic thing that I probably should know, but I don't remember exactly how to get the class name from JavaScript's instance. You can do type of, is that what it is? Type or type of a JavaScript object. And I believe it will actually give you the class if there is one. Hopefully that answers your question. That's a good thing I should probably know. Really basic, but I should probably know that. Anyways, I kind of knew it. Give me credit for that, I guess, huh? How to do at least a decent front end, even if I'm more interested in back end, what should I take care of? Because good Django devs I know cannot build decent front end /UI. Yeah. So, well, the thing is, if you're really good at the back end, including all the DevOps stuff, you might never need to really design the front end. It's probably a good idea to play around with it and know conceptually of what needs to happen to make a front end work. But you might be able to get away with just doing the back end. That being said, I think learning some JavaScript, specifically something like React.js, is a really powerful way to get the gist of how the front end works while not having to spend a ton of time actually building front ends or user interfaces yourself. Of course, that also means that you probably know HTML and CSS. But again, if you know Django incredibly well and not the template side, but you know the views, the models, the forms, serializers, and all sorts of stuff like that, you could probably make a really good living just focusing on those things. You don't necessarily have to be a front end developer too. But then you go deeper in the back end and you do DevOps stuff. That I think is pretty cool. You're learning web development because you're passionate about it, but sometimes you hear it's dying compared to AI and cyber, since Wix and other no-code platforms are dominating. Okay, so the thing about every platform that exists right now that does no-code things, like Wix, like Shopify, all of those things are driven through software. So somebody is building those things. So it's really a case of a rising tide raises all ships. So sure, Wix and these no-code tools are incredible. But the thing is, if you want to do something new and novel, it's probably not going to come from a tool that already exists. That being said, there are no code tools that are making it easier to like refactor how things interact with each other, and thus not necessarily needing a software developer to build them. In other words, you should use the best tool for the problem at hand. A lot of times those are no code options. A lot of times they aren't. A lot of times they need full code. They need an actual software developer to build these things. But if you're passionate about it, you should just do it. Just stick with it. You might actually end up getting into artificial intelligence or crypto or many of the other things that you could potentially do with software skills. But the gist is, if you're passionate about something, just keep doing it, right? Like software is not going away. Building web development or doing web applications is not going away. No matter what the hype train says, software is too important for it to be only in the hands of a few people, which is what these no-code tools are. They're only in the hands of a few people. Granted, they can be incredibly effective and very useful. Again, use the right tool for the job, but that doesn't mean that we won't need web developers. And in fact, I would argue the opposite. We need more web developers because of these no-code tools, because they don't cover everything. And so people like creative marketers or entrepreneurs that don't want to learn how to code use a no-code tool, and then they hit this gap. They want something accomplished, this X thing accomplished, but now they have a really good idea of how the code needs to work for that to be accomplished because they've done all these no-code tools. So then they can find people like you and hire you to actually build that for them in their no-code pipeline or no-code ecosystem, which I think is really cool. AI might actually take over all software development jobs. Maybe, maybe not. I'm going on the basis that it's going to improve our jobs, not take them over. Cryptocurrency is a whole nother ball game. That's not necessarily something here just yet. Good question, though. Good question. Where do I see Django in the next couple of years? A lot more asynchronous. I'm really hoping they bring in the Django REST framework to be a core part of Django. So they're building a lot more API first type things because that's how a lot of developers are using them these days. It would also be nice to see some support for native support for server-side rendering of JavaScript static assets. So like Vue.js or React. I don't know if that's going to happen. It probably won't happen because Django should actually still exist in this nice area where it has this beautiful ecosystem that people can build on top of it and make those things happen. So I think the key thing is more asynchronous code. In the Django REST the Django framework, do you have a video on buttons, click event to run a function? Yeah, so Django itself is a web framework, right? So it doesn't actually monitor click events like JavaScript can because it doesn't run in the browser. Django runs on a server, which renders out a web page that can run JavaScript to run in the browser. So you need JavaScript to be able to monitor for click events. You can still have Django handle click events by submitting a form, but that's not the same as what I think you're trying to say. So you can submit a form, and once you submit a form, that can run a function itself. But more than likely, you'll be using JavaScript to handle that. Shashir, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. What is my advice on getting started with machine learning using Python? Learn some pandas and Jupyter notebooks, and then do a spam ham detector. I have a series on the Hello World of machine learning, and it does exactly that. So that's scikit-learn is what we end up using because it's a very popular machine learning library. But the general idea is you need to collect data. You need to use some sort of pre-built algorithm that will train a new algorithm for you. And that will be your machine learning algorithm at the end. But you basically just take a bunch of data to do that. Future Django just mentioned this. Compare it with technologies such as Go. Go and Python are the comparison, not Go and Django. Django is a web framework written in Python, for those of you who don't already know. Do I use web scraping to make that beautiful comments pop up on your screen? No. This is a service called StreamYard.com. They actually handle these comments coming up. But I actually did make a tool that uses an API, YouTube's API, to actually get the comments. And that tool I integrated with my OBS Studio, which is my recording studio, to actually embed over videos as well. I'm not using it currently because StreamYard is just really easy to do. Thanks for the question. You are welcome for your answer, Yassine. Thanks for asking. Have you ever had to use a tree, linked list, graph, stack, queue in an actual project? That's a good question. Yeah, queues for sure. This feels a lot more like a Java question. So queues, absolutely. Linked lists, yes. Yeah, I mean, stacks and graphs I don't use nearly as much, but I'm also not working at a scale where they make sense most of the time. But graphs certainly can make sense depending on if you have enough scale. That's where graphs really, really shine. But I think it's well worth it. Rita, you're welcome. Thanks for coming out. Corey, I'm glad I could help. Is it a good idea to use Ajax in my serious Django project? Yes, absolutely. Asynchronous JavaScript requests are always a good idea. All right, guys. So that's probably it for the questions at this point. I think I actually answered almost all of them, and we didn't go over. I see that there's one more that just came in. I'll answer that one in a moment. But the main thing is we didn't go quite an hour, which is good. I'm glad I actually stuck around as long as I did earlier because this live chat thing just really was failing me. And it's not showing up on StreamYard, so they got some delay over here. But yeah, thanks for coming out. Oh, okay. So I've got a few more questions. I'm going to answer them, and then I'm going to sign off. Okay. Form does not get data from a user with a certain model, but if I change the model fields, name gets and migrate it, gets the data. Do you know why this happens? It might be as simple as restarting your server. That might be it. Let's see. Can I tell you a use case where Tornado might better fit than Django? Tornado is a smaller framework. I don't use Tornado enough to give the exact use case of it, but the smaller micro frameworks, the non-Django Python web frameworks, those are great for rapid prototyping of things. And if you need asynchronous capabilities, Tornado's one, Fast API is one. So you could just build something really, really quickly and not need all of the features that Django comes with it. Because Tornado, if I remember correctly, Tornado does not have a bunch of features out of the box that Django does. Is Django as a backend with React.js better than Vue.js? React and Vue are like saying is a orange better than an apple. They're very, very similar. They both accomplish roughly the same goal. So I think it's great with either one. In fact, you could probably use both of them. You could probably use React and Vue in the same project, just not necessarily on the same page. Hey, how's it going? Good to see you. You're a web developer and using Django and React. If I wanted to make the machine learning, what would be the right way? To get very comfortable cleaning data. So web scraping and mining data and then cleaning up that data, make it nice and like numbers are all numbers. There's no strings of numbers, or currency is all currency. Like you actually extract the currency amount without any string. It's like a float or a decimal number. Doing ETL, it's called ETL, extract, transform, load, is a big part of your job as a machine learning engineer. You're just cleaning up data a lot. Writing the actual algorithms, you don't actually spend a lot of time in that arena. You certainly can, but it's not like a web developer. So a web developer pretty much writes code constantly. They're not trying to think of how to actually clean the data or make better associations. So transitioning to it would be, like I said earlier, just picking a pretty simple project that requires a bunch of data that machine learning can help with. I think a spam detector is really good for this because it's just a binary option. It's either spam or it's not. And so you can kind of build something from that. You could also make a chatbot, but chatbots never work as impressively, especially if you're doing it on your own. They never work as impressively as you want them to. Like you want to have a real conversation with this thing, and it like I've never seen that still, right? Even including all the billions of dollars that are being spent on these chatbots. Do you know that JavaScript got its name due to the popularity of Java at the time? Yeah, that sounds about right. I want to say it was something like Hello Script or something like that before. Maybe it wasn't Hello Script. Maybe it sounded worse than that. But yeah, I'm not surprised that they emulated Java at that time in the early 90s. Does Firebase and Django, could they integrate together in the same project? Yeah, I think Firebase has a number of features that you can use with Django. I don't use Firebase that much, but you wouldn't really use Firebase as your Django backend necessarily. Cool. All right, guys. So thanks so much for the questions. Sorry if I missed yours. I had a good time chatting with you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to do another live chat soon. I might be jumping on one tomorrow. That's still to be determined. But yeah, thanks again for checking us out, and look forward to chatting with you guys again. See you next time. Bye.